Hey, this is part 2 on the Synagogue of Satan. In part 1 we'd left off where the Persians had entered into Babylon and dispersed the priests of Marduk and destroyed their temple. And up to this time the priests of Marduk were gaining influence far beyond Babylon. They had infiltrated priest castes as far as Egypt and the Mediterranean, and they probably had influence as far as India, even the Far East. And they would enter into religions around the world, and they would alter the mythologies and stories of different countries, making it more like their own religion. Now, at the time that the Persians entered Babylon, there was a rise in what's known as the mystery religions and the cult of Mithra. And this cult had existed long before, but at about the time that Babylon was taken over by the Persians, there was a rise of this cult around the world, spreading around the world, and it's connected or associated with Persia, but it actually is older and may have come from another source, an earlier influence. And I'd like to add something that might be a possible connection between the cult of Mithra and the priests of Marduk, and that's in the similarity between the name Mithra and Marad, which is the word for rebellion I mentioned in the earlier video. And you can take Marad, the letters M-R-D, and mix them around, and you might have Madra instead of Marad. And then if you take Mithra, the TH in Mithra, the TH could easily be a D. That happened a lot in the change of how words were pronounced and also written. Sometimes the word Maitreya is used for Mithra, and this is pretty close to Madra or Marad. The word Mithra itself means a covenant or a bond, and we get the word mitre like a pope's mitre or an abbot's mitre. So I would just ask, what kind of covenant or bond is this? Is this a covenant for a rebellion? Is it actually rebellion that's involved? So the name Mithra may have actually been an altered form of Marduk, and it may have been altered to cover who the god really was that was being worshipped. So now we have Marduk connected to Mithra, and if you remember I had said that Nimrod also may have been Marduk, and these all may have come from the word for rebellion, which was Marad. And you might wonder, what about the extra K and the extra N, the K in Marduk and the N in Nimrod, and they're not in Marad or Mithra. I'm not sure where the K came from, but as for the N in Nimrod, N and M are very similar, so in pronunciation the word Marad might have shifted to Nimarad or Menarad, where the N and M are very similar and they get pronounced differently by different people. And for some strange reason also words are actually written left to right or right to left, depending on whether you're in the East or in the West. In the East they're written right to left and recited that way, and in the West it's left to right and recited that way also. And I just wanted to point out something interesting about the common coin in the Persian Empire at that time. That was the drachma, and in English it's called the dram or the derrick, and the word drachma itself comes from the Greek language, but that was borrowed from the Persian. The Hebrews also had a related word that was the darkamun or the adarkan, and they were both for the same coin, the drachma. It was a common weight and a common measure for a silver coin that was widely used in the Persian Empire. Now in the Greek language, the word drachma is actually related to some Indo-European roots, dirk and derg, and those mean to take, grasp, to seize, to accept. And the drachma, I guess you could see that as it was an accepted form of coin, a form of money. But it's interesting that also the word dragon comes from the Greek, and that's connected to the same root, to seize or to appear, to see, or to look. Now remember that the god Marduk was almost always depicted as a dragon, and if you look at the word drachma, you see the same consonants in drachma as you see in Marduk. And I don't think this is a coincidence. It appears that the name of drachma and Marduk are the same, and the word is just mutated as it's been borrowed by different people or altered on purpose to hide the real name of Marduk or the dragon. Okay, Looking back at the Persian Empire, we know that the Persians ruled from Babylon for some time, and we know that there were several revolts there. No doubt the priests of Marduk were behind those revolts, and eventually the city of Babylon itself was destroyed, and the temple. And we have several accounts from the Bible about this time also. We know that according to the Bible, the officers, priests, and administrators of the Persian Empire actually conspired against Daniel, and no doubt the priests of Marduk were behind that also. We also have the book of Esther from the Bible, which gives an account from this time, but there were a lot of scholars that rejected the book of Esther and did not include it in the Bible. It was actually rejected by the Syrian Christians, the Nestorians rejected it, Melito rejected it around 170 AD, Origen rejected it around 250 AD, the Greek Church rejected it, but Jerome allowed it in the Roman Catholic Bible because the Jews liked it. The book of Esther seems to have a hidden message, and it seems to be actually something other than what it appears to be. If you'll notice that the heroes in the book are Mordecai and Esther, but those names, Mordecai and Esther, are actually the names Marduk and Ishtar, and those are the main Babylonian gods. And it seems that all the names in the book are either Babylonian gods or Iranian gods or Persian gods, and that the real meaning of the story is the victory of the Babylonian gods over the Iranian gods. And the main story in the book of Esther is how the Jews were given sanction by the Persian emperor to kill their enemies. They could kill at will anyone that was opposing them. But were these so-called Jews in the story really priests of Marduk in disguise? Had they disguised themselves to cover who they really were for some plan for the future? And had they infiltrated the Jewish religion as they had infiltrated many other religions around the world? There is evidence that this is the case, and also that the Edomites, who were the enemies of Israel mentioned in the Bible, that they also wanted to go along with the plan to masquerade as God's chosen people, the Israelites, the descendants of Abraham. We know from the Bible and other accounts that exiles from Jerusalem were sent to Babylon, and these would have been made up from the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Did some of them adopt the cult of Marduk or Mithra? And was the cult of Marduk or Mithra made up of foreigners and also converts from the Jewish people? So here we have the destruction of Babylon and the rise of the mystery religions and the cult of Marduk or Mithra, and we have the rise of a people in the disguise of the Jews and also infiltrating other religions. And it's also interesting to note that Babylon was built on the 33rd parallel latitude, and the pyramids of Egypt were also built on the 33rd parallel, and so we'll keep that for later. That's an interesting number, the number 33. I would bet that the priests of Marduk would want revenge for the destruction of their temple and the city of Babylon. So did the priests of Marduk actually stir up the Greeks and Alexander the Great to destroy the Persian Empire just for revenge? Is there a hatred even today for the Persians or the Iranians for destroying the temple of Marduk at Babylon? As the Persian Empire grew, it extended its power into Greece, but the cult of Mithra or Marduk was also extending influence into Greece. And even though it's true that the Persian Empire was trying to grab power in Greece, there did seem to be a rebellious spirit at work, and you can see how the cult of Mithra would have played the Persians off the Greeks. The Persians under Darius the Great were stopped by the Greeks at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC, but Xerxes I of Persia succeeded at the Battle of Thermopylae in 480 BC, and the city of Athens itself was actually destroyed or severely damaged. And notice that Babylon had been destroyed in 478 BC, so all these things were happening at about the same time. The Persians could never really subjugate the Greeks, and they were finally turned back by Alexander the Great. Now the history books will tell you that Alexander had just wanted to liberate some Greeks in Asia Minor from the power of the Persians, and his victory over the Persians was just some kind of an accident. But I would say that he had had designs on Persia all along, and he had even wanted to restore the city of Babylon. And he had been initiated into the mysteries, including the cult of Mithra, He had even gone down to Egypt to be anointed some kind of mystical leader. Why would he want to rebuild the city of Babylon and even the temple at Babylon? He had planned to restore the city, and work was actually underway until it was cut off when he died there in 323 BC. His generals took over, and they were able to take over the city of Babylon in 312 BC, but for some reason they didn't restore the city, and they built the city of Seleucia instead, a little further to the southeast of Babylon on the Tigris River, and this was named after Alexander's general Seleucus. Alexander's empire was eventually divided up between his generals, and out of this division there arose several empires. One was the Seleucid Empire, and that ruled from Seleucia in Mesopotamia. Another was the Ptolemaic Empire in Egypt, and that was named for Alexander's general Ptolemy. Another empire was in Asia Minor, and that was taken over by Alexander's general Lysimachus. That wasn't as strong, and it was actually taken over by Attalus and became known as the Attalid Empire. Pergamum, or Perga, became the capital of the Attalid Empire, and there's evidence that the cult of Mithra thrived in Pergamum. Pergamum seemed to be a center that was used by the other stronger empires of the Seleucids and the Ptolemies against each other. Pergamum had many important shrines to different gods and goddesses like Zeus, Athena, Diana, and even had a cult called the cult of Asclepius, and that became associated with the medical professions ever since. Attalus, the king of Pergamum, took the title, which could be roughly translated as Pontifex Maximus, and other Greek rulers were also doing this, and Alexander the Great himself probably also took this title. And this title seemed to go all the way back to the priests of Marduk in Babylon, where they would wear a scarlet robe and a mitre shaped like a fish's head. And this title seemed to be involved with emperor worship, and the emperor worship seemed to be centered in Pergamum. I'll continue with the rise of emperor worship at Pergamum, and with the decline of the Greek empires and the rise of the Roman Empire, and also with the further infiltration of temple worship at Jerusalem and the Jewish religion by the priests of Marduk, the cult of Mithra, Synagogue of Satan. So until next time.